third page of the copies, line 12. Even though we started learning a few lines into Ois Gimel, we'll begin again from Ois Gimel. And we were explaining and connecting the idea of ובראשי חדשיכם, that the idea that the months, the head of months, has to do with the chidush that Chodesh Nisan brought into the months. That even though beforehand they were head of months also, but still in all, through Hashem choosing this month of Geula over the head of months the way it was before, so he manifested and brought through Rosh Chodesh Nisan, now that all the months receive from the head of the month of Nisan, so now all the months are also elevated because of it. And he was connecting it with the whole idea that what occurred in the month of Nisan, the idea of Yitzias Mitzrayim, the idea of Kriyas Yamsuf, all of these things are beginnings for the things that will occur when Mashiach comes, the leaving Golus when Mashiach comes, Aren Niflois, and the idea of the crossing of the river is a result of the Halfach Yom Li'abasha. And now the Rebbe is going to connect it with the pasuk in Kapitel Tilim Ayin Dalet. Ois Gimel. We can connect this also what it says. Remember your congregation, in other words, the Yidden, that you have acquired, the Kanisa Kedem, that you have acquired early on. You redeemed the tribe of your lot, your portion. Har Tzion zeh shchanta, by the mountain of Tzion, this is what you rested in and dwelled in. So, what does it mean early on? That means before the creation of the world, like Rashi explains on that pasuk. For this it says concerning the Jewish people, your congregation is Kedem. Medrash, like it's brought on in Medrash, Shiva Dvarim Kadmu L'Brias Olam Chulu, 7 things preceded the creation of the world, and the Medrash goes on to bring a pasuk for each one of these things to prove that they preceded the creation of the world. And Yisrael Menayin, the Medrash says, how do we know that the Yidden preceded the creation of the world? Shenamar, like it says, Zechor Adoscha Kanisa Kedem. Remember your congregation that you acquired early on, before, meaning before the creation. But amongst those, the Medrash then concludes, like he concludes, that the thoughts of the Yidden preceded everything, even everything else of those 7 that preceded the world. This is in such a manner of an acquisition. That's why it says in the pasuk, Kanisa, you acquired. You say that the idea of acquisition shows on a special love. In other words, you have this idea that this is something that you value and you're willing to go out to receive. Brings the Medrash Shmuel on Pirkei Avos, Perek Vav, speaks about the idea of Kinyan Torah, the acquisition of Torah shows on special love. Moving for this understood, this idea, the content of what it says that your congregation you acquired early on. It's similar to what we said before. Now, when Hashem chose Yaakov and his children, so then he established Nisan as a month of redemption. So the choosing of Yaakov and his children and your congregation that you acquired early on is the same concept. Just like as a result of Hashem choosing in Yaakov and his children. Therefore, he established for them a head of month of redemption, that with that the Yidden were redeemed, and through that the Yidden were redeemed from Mitzrayim. So the same thing in the pasuk of Adoscha Kanisa Mekedem, Hinegam Kiteitzah, Ma'in Adoscha Kanisa Mekedem, also the same thing as a result and an outcome and a consequence from the idea that your congregation you acquired early on. Nimshach Lias Ga'alto Shev Nachlasecha, comes out the next part of the pasuk, that you redeemed the staff, the shoot, the tribe of your lot. Va'ad l'siyum v'tachlis hakavanos hagula, until the conclusion and the ultimate intention of the geula is not just to take the Yidden out of Mitzrayim, but to lead them into Eretz Yisrael, la'aloyse goyim el Eretz toiv rechava, to raise them up to a good and broad land. Shazel mashu nemar har tzion zeh shchanta, by this where it says the mount of Tzion, in this you dwelled in. It's talking about Shekoyel Artzein Agdoisha. This is referring to our holy land. Eretz Asher Goymer Eine Avaylekecha Ba Mereish Sashana V'Adachas Shana, a land that the eyes of Hashem your God is from the beginning of the year till the end of the year, top of page Ches. This is also what Rashi wrote in the beginning of his explanation and commentary on the Torah. Ala Pasuk Bereshis Bar Elokim as Shemaim Sa'aretz, on the Pasuk that says that Bereshis Bar Elokim, Rabbi Yitzchak said, Ma Tam Pasuk Bereshis. What's the reason that the Torah began with Bereshis? It should have begun with the mitzvahs, Torahs, and the word Torah should have begun with the mitzvahs of the Torah. It should have begun with Achayis Elochem. And the answer is, because the power of his actions, he related to his nation to give them an inheritance of the Goyim. Meaning, this means the Bereshis, because of the idea of Bereshis. So the emphasis over here, Bereshis, is like the concept of Kedem. The word Bereshis indicates the beginning of all matters, the idea of Kedem, of early on. That's why the Yidden are called the Reishis, the first. Why are they called first? Like Rashi also brings down this, also, what's the meaning of the word Bereshis? Beis Reishis, Yisrael are called Reishis. Why are they called Reishis? Because for the same thing that we said before, because the thought of the Yidden preceded all matters. And Nitna Lahem Eretz Yisrael. That's why Eretz Yisrael was given to the Yidden. And Ella, Shkedei She'inyan Zeh Yeh B'ofen De Yisna Omer HaChoshech V'Yisna Chacham HaSichlos. The question arises, why did it have to be, if the whole purpose was the Yidden are the first, and therefore Eretz Yisrael was given to the Yidden, so why didn't they get it right away? But so the Rebbe explains the parentheses, so it should be in a way of the excess and the additional light that comes out of the darkness and the excess wisdom that comes out of foolishness. Hainu meaning, in a way of sublimating and transforming darkness to light. Therefore, it was in such a manner, initially, by his will, like Rashi says over there, he gave it to them, he made it an inheritance, a lot of the non-Jews. And afterwards he took it from them, and he gave it to us, to the tribe of your lot. Who is the lot of Hashem, the Yidden. In a way of a giving, a gift, to give to them, he gave it to us. When a gift is given, it's miyadei hamleah psuchak deutsch v'rechav. It's from his full, open, holy, and broad hand. Sharei kol hanoisen, whoever gives. V'alachas kam v'kama kasher hanoisen hakadosh baruch hu. How much more so when the giver is Hashem? So the Chazal say, ba'ayin yafa noisen, he gives it with a good eye. In other words, he's not stingy. He gives in the fullest manner. Ois Daled, line 20. But still we need to understand the great quality and advantage of going out of Mitzrayim. Like we spoke about previously at length in the previous Maimer. Seemingly it's not understood. What is the idea that, like the days of you going out of the land of Mitzrayim, I will show you wonders, meaning for the sake of being this idea that I will show you wonders when you go out of Mitzrayim. I'm sorry. So there should be that I will show you wonders when Mashiach comes. There's a need in the beginning and the start of your going out of the lands of Mitzrayim. And similarly, just like for the sake of you should cross you will cross the river by foot, which is going to take place when Mashiach comes, when he splits the river Praz. There's a need and idea of transforming the sea to dry land. So the question is, why is that necessary to be in such a way? When Mashiach comes, the idea of remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim will only be something ancillary to, in comparison to the future redemption. Yetzias Mitzrayim will not be as significant, though we will mention it, but it will be still ancillary to the actual Geula from this final goals. So if it's only ancillary, so seemingly it doesn't have such a great power. If so, what is the need? Top of page test. And the idea of the days of you going out of the land of Mitzrayim, that through that is the enabler, that is the cause that it should be able to be, that I will show you wonders. Second paragraph on page test. Also, we need to understand concerning the days of going out of Mitzrayim itself, not so much what's going to occur when Mashiach comes. Here the Rebbe asks another interesting question that he hasn't discussed in the previous two Mamarim. He says, what's the difference between going out of Mitzrayim to the splitting of the Yamsuf? What's the reason that the main emphasis is concerning the idea of going out of Mitzrayim specifically, not seemingly so much on the idea of Kriyas Yamsuf? Like, for example, concerning the giving of the Torah, concerning that, it says, by Mitzrayim, when you take out the land from Mitzrayim, when you take out the people from Mitzrayim, you will serve Hashem on this mountain Torah al Har Sinai. That's when the Torah was given on. In other words, it's referring to the event of the giving of the Torah on Har Sinai. That's what it means. We know that the true freedom of the enslavement and subjugation of Mitzrayim took place by Matan Torah, and also not just from the enslavement of Mitzrayim, but Shibud the Chol Malchus, and also the enslavement of all kingdoms. The Brais of the Kinyan Torah, like the Chazal state in the Brais of Kinyan Torah, which is another name for the 6th chapter of Pirkei Avos. It says in the pasuk, Chorus al Haluchas. It says that the words of Hashem were engraved on the tablets, on the luchas. You remember Beluchas Rishonis that says concerning the first tablets, Al Tikra Chorus Elachedus, the Chazal say, do not read it engraved, but read it freedom. In other words, that Matan Torah was the ultimate completion and continuation of freedom from Mitzrayim, and it's also, like you said, also the freedom of all enslavements. And what do we say by Matan Torah, which is the conclusion of Yetzias Mitzrayim? What do we emphasize? We don't emphasize Kriyas Yamsuf. We only speak about the Chsiv, like it says, I am Hashem your God, that I took you out of the land of Mitzrayim. It doesn't mention the idea of Kriyas Yamsuf, even though we mentioned before that Kriyas Yamsuf was a precursor to Matan Torah, the El Yoinim coming down to Tachtoinim, and Tachtoinim Yal El Yoinim had to do with Hafach Yam Liabosha, that the sea came down to the dry land, or the dry land became up to the sea, etc., etc. That's no mention. All it's mentioned is that I took you out of the land of Mitzrayim. Before he's going to explain that concept, he's going to introduce something else. What is so special that we mention Yetzias Mitzrayim by Matan Torah and not the creation? The well-known question, line 15, by prefacing the well-known analysis. Why does it say, why does Hashem identify himself? I am Hashem that took you out of the land of Mitzrayim. And not that I the one that created the heavens and the earth. So the answer for this is because in the creation of heavens and earth, from nothing to something, we do not see a miracle of changing nature. As opposed to going out of Mitzrayim is the greatest miracle. Though Pari wasn't the greatest might and strength, like it's explained in the Zohar at the beginning of Parshas Boil Pari, that Moshe Rabbeinu was scared. He was the big Tanin, the big Klippa, and he didn't know. That's why Hashem had to say, "Come, I will go with you." And so strong was Pari. Until not even one servant or slave could escape Mitzrayim. Became, despite the strength of Mitzrayim, Hoya in the Yitzias Mitzrayim, was the idea of going out of Mitzrayim as a result of I, Havaya Lekecha. Anoichi Daika, specifically the level of I. Shalamayla Me'avaya, that's beyond the name of Yudke Vovke. Shagam Hu Lamayla Melekecha, that's even higher than the level of Elekecha. Only through Anoichi could be the idea that I took you out of the land of Mitzrayim. And because this was such an amazing miracle, that such a miracle was not recognizable in and when the Yidden went, when the world was created. That's why the idea of Yitzias Mitzrayim, who Amad Chazak, it's a strong pillar, like it's the well-known expression in Sefer HaChinuch, in matters of Torah and mitzvahs. Torah mitzvahs, top of page Yud, are connected with a commemoration of going out of Mitzrayim. So that is all the preface. That it says, not that I created heavens and earth. But getting back to the initial question over here in this ice, is we still need to understand, like it's known the analysis also. Why doesn't Hashem identify himself as well by I am Hashem your God that split the sea? Also in the splitting of the sea was also very great miracles, like when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim. To such a degree are the miracles so great that when we use a term to indicate how difficult something is before Hashem Kaviyachol, we use it by concerning Kriyas Yamsuf. We use kasha, as the expression is in Chazal, in the parentheses, it says kasha Kriyas Yamsuf. It's as difficult as the splitting of the sea, whether it's joining two people in marriage, or whether getting the sustenance of a person, etc., etc. So the Rebbe goes on in Oishei Vabir Bazeh, and the explanation this Alkapanim Nekudosin, at least the point of the matter. The reason why the matter of Kriyas Yamsuf is called a difficult thing, it's because there had to be the transformation of sea to dry land. Like it says in the Pasuk of Bnei Yisrael, that the Jewish people traveled within the sea in dry land. This means though the way it was established and set down here was in such a way that the laws of nature will not cease, meaning there's a location in the world of sea, and there's a place in the world which is dry land, and there's a border between them. Like it says in the Pasuk, I have made the sand a border to the sea. And it's not just like over here we have it, but it has no significance. But actually, the fact that we have it down here is an expression of spiritual levels of separation as well. The reason for this is that the reason why it's down here below, because also above there's concealed worlds that are not revealed, and there's revealed worlds, and between the concealed and revealed worlds, which is the source for It's the sea, which has everything concealed in it, and the dry land, which has revealed creatures on it. Just like the sea and dry land down here have a boundary, so too above between the concealed worlds and the revealed worlds, there is a boundary and a curtain. Let's explain that well at length in Kabbalah's form. Afal still in all, there became a total change. That the sea became transformed to dry land. Hein lamata, both down here below, v'hein b'chol ha'olamus, and also in all the worlds, the sea became transformed to dry land. That's the inner meaning of what the Chazal say, Nivku kol meimus shebe'olam. The Chazal explained that there was an amazing miracle during Kriyas Yamsuf, that wherever there were any types of waters that were gathered together, at the time of Kriyas Yamsuf, when the Yamsuf split, all the waters in the world split as well. The Rebbe explains it that the pnimius of that is, meaning all the waters in Seder Ishtalshus, all the separations, all the concealed levels in Seder Ishtalshus became revealed, just like down here the physical sea and water was removed, the boundary between them. And this goes up to the highest most levels, the Rebbe says in line 22, even to levels that are beyond Atzilus, there was also this transformation. Let's explain that length in the Sha'ar Amun of the Mittler Rebbe. The way how there was this removal of the sea separation from the dry land, according to that was in two manners. According to the opinion of the Zohar, was in a way from above to below. From below to above. That the worlds of Bri Yetzira Asiya rose up and ascended to the world of Atzilus. According to the opinion of the Arizal, it was in a way from above to below. It's the drawing down the world of Atzilus in the worlds of Bri Yetzira Asiya. Now the Rebbe right away says it's not a dispute, but top of page Yud Aleph, that these and those are the words of the living God. Just like the Chazal say this Lagaba, all machlokes, and the same thing over here for sure. This distinction between the Zohar and the Arizal are not exclusive of each other, but both are correct. Let's explain that length in the Hemshech known as Vehechrim of the Rebbe Marash, and in many places that both of them were correct. There was both an ascent from below to above and a descent from above to below. Pratis Yoser, more specifically, like was explained in the previous, in the two Mambarim previous, at length, or maybe also it was on the previous Maimer. I think it was two Mamarim ago. Shemishvil Kriyas Yamsuf, for the sake of the splitting of the sea, there had to be a powerful eastern wind. That shows on a very great hamshacha that comes from above. In addition to the powerful eastern wind, there had to be the idea that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, raise up your staff and stretch out your arm. This was said also to Moshe while he was down here in a physical body, but still in all, he was in such a form of a neshama of Atzilus in a revealed way. This is the reason why it says, when it says in the Torah, Moshe, there is no cantillation, separation between the two. When it says Avram, or Yaakov, etc., there's a separation indicating there's a difference between Avram is above and the way it comes down here. But when it says Moshe, it's the same. And so that Hamshach of Atzilus was down here below, and that Moshe that was down here below, the way is Atzilus, Shetzarach is Harim, is Matchal Amayla Yoser, raising up. He needed to raise up, even though he was so high, he had to reach to something even higher than where he was. He had to raise up his staff to even higher. And after he raised up his staff to even higher, afterwards he had to be stretching out your hand. To come down from above to below. Concerning this, it says he transformed the sea to dry land by Kriyas Yamsuf. And Mashiach comes in the river, they will cross by foot. So it should be able to be when Mashiach comes. The idea of by the river they will cross by foot. Through what it says about Mashiach, that he will stretch out his hand over the river in the strength of his spirit. His spirit is similar to Ruach, the powerful eastern wind that took place by the splitting of the sea. Also, this is something that is kaviyachol difficult for him, the splitting of the river by Mashiach's times. That's why you need to have bayom ruchay, the strength of his spirit. There had to be the opening for this, the start of this, through transforming the sea to dry land in the splitting of the sea.